Guess who's back with another speed paint? It's me! Today we have my OC Nixie, but before we start, remember that these videos move very quickly and can trigger photosensitive conditions, so watch at your own risk. Alright, first we do a sketch. As usual, I have my 3D model to the side as reference, although I might occasionally move it over to check if I got my anatomy right, or the proportions or whatever. I briefly played around with the idea of a different hand, mostly off camera, but the little W there was actually the fingers of, like, a little scribble. I scrapped it. I take a minute to struggle with the leg, but decide to leave it for later and instead work on the shoulders and that hand. But then I finally get the head drawn in and resize the sketch. Then I fixed the leg and slapped down some hair, though I knew I'd need a second sketch on it because it wasn't going to be clear to future Mango what I was trying to get at, so I start cleaning stuff up in the hair and face area. Then I begin my battle with the skirt. You can see I slapped down a reference, an upside down tulip over there, but I end up disregarding it completely and just doing my own thing. Then I just, freehand that hand like a badass, no big deal, and start on the wings. I have a lot of references for Marvelous Spatial Tales up, but rest assured they will multiply before the end of this video. And then over on the side, I do a sketch of her back to kind of show how her wings and tail connect, and then I do a third, sort of second and a half sketch, just sort of cleaning up the places I didn't clean up before and fixing little bits I don't like. It's at this point that I accidentally dragged something in OBS and the recording moved into a corner and cut off the tools left a black space on the right. I'm zooming in post, but it does get corrected later on. Super later on, so don't worry, it'll be back. Just sorry. Now we start on the line art. In my other Speedpaint, I slowed it down, but in this one, the line art took me so long, I'm speeding it up. Same with the flat color. Because let's be honest, we're all here for the shading. As usual, my lining process has a lot of post-correction, which is why I use a vector layer, because my hands are so shaky. But the skirt and the wings were hard to do in, like, multiple strokes, with it still looking natural and stuff, so it ended up taking a lot longer with those than the rest of it. I also struggled with the tails, but don't worry, I do end up throwing them in the garbage and completely redoing them later. I also struggled with the wings, but that is a whole different battle, because it was mostly the coloring I struggled with. I ended up taking multiple long breaks, like one was a whole month long, because I didn't know how to proceed with the tails and the wings, anything with feathers. In the end, they kind of look half-assed, but like, it's better half-assed than no-assed. Speaking of ass, I'm sorry. Flat color time, yay! So, you can't see due to that stupid slidey mistake I made earlier, but I'm currently color picking for her palette down in the bottom left. You'd think I would already have a palette for her since she's my character and all, but I've moved computers twice in the past 4 years I've been making characters for this series, and I've also moved art programs twice. So, first I was on Paint Toolside 2 for the first couple drawings on the family desktop computer. Then I moved back to my old laptop, still on Paint Toolside 2, but tried out Photoshop for that one slightly more detailed headshot over there in the references. But now I've finally built a PC, gotten a better tablet, and settled into Clip Studio Paint. It's been a journey. But yeah, I needed to redo her palette. I even end up changing some of her colors because some of the colors I used for shading like her hair were atrocious. I used to use like super dark shadows in place of using any highlights, and now I just use highlights instead of shadows. I've done a 180. Starting to work on the face, you can see I never really do line art for the eyes. It's because I prefer like a softer, fluffier look for the eyelashes. I don't know, it's just like easier for me that way. And as always, I separate my layers into lashes, sclera, iris, and highlight, leaving everything separate. Some artists prefer to have a more blended, like soft look to the iris. I've never been good at that, so obviously I just don't try. It's the only solution. Here in the final stretches of flat color, I do my favorite little trick where I copy sections of the line art and paste them to a new layer. Then I change them to the color of that section of flat color and merge them. This is just kind of to make sure that my flat color is neat and there's little to no gaps between the line and the color. Here's where I start to render, but really I just get the lashes and her cute little blush and glittery freckle combo down before I remember I have to do flat color for the back view. Now the process really begins. I start with her nose before I run out of steam, and like always, I had absolutely no clue what I'm doing and just play around until I find a style I like. And honestly, I really like how her face came out in this. She looks super cute, but also like, an adult woman, which is something I used to struggle with when I first started out. I watched a lot of anime when I was young and just starting out with art, and I wanted to replicate that style. So my characters would always end up looking like that ambiguous, am I a middle schooler or a freshman in college age? In fact, it was around 2017, I think, when I started branching out from that style, just in time to start the Anon series in 2019, with my main character being a mangled but badass green lady. But even still, Nixie, made shortly after as my second character in the series, still looked like a child. I couldn't really balance cute and mature features that well, but I'm glad I'm improving on that, I think. And here we are, everyone's favorite part to watch, the eyes. I start with the overall shadow and the highlight before I start doing anything with the iris. This just kind of helps me decide how much detail to put in and how much will be too much with lights and whatnot. Overall, I sort of just scribble while looking at inspiration pictures until I end up with a combination of techniques that I like. And whenever I feel that my eyes are lacking in texture, I just use my favorite particle pen, which is CRM Pupil Particle by K. Mekuo on CSP Assets. moving on to the body, as always, I start with the shadows. You can see I tried a similar technique to what I did in the Mave Speedpaint with my melt coating sugar beet brush, but I honestly didn't have the patience to not use the blur tool. So the melt coating sugar beet brush has this nice soft edge to it and gently blurs when you go over it with light pressure, but my shaky ass hands weren't letting me use light pressure on this piece, so I had to use the default blur tool instead. For now, we're just moving on to the clothes. The bodice was pretty straightforward, with just some light shading and going in with a darker tone afterwards, and while I had my green out, I decided to just go ahead and hit the shoes before I did the skirt. The skirt really had me puzzled for a bit. I've never really been a flower artist. I don't really draw anything but people, so I had to find a way to make it look like flower petals without actually knowing how to draw flower petals. I had some references of tulips up on my other monitor to help out, and I sort of just slapped colors around in varying orders until it looked okay. And then you can see me play with the blending mode so that I can see what I'm doing just a bit better. Going in with the highlights on the skirt made the rest of the image look like really flat, so after adding a plant-like texture, I start on highlighting her skin. I find highlights on super saturated skin tones are super important, because without it, it just looks so drab and boring and one-dimensional. And that's definitely a style, don't get me wrong, but usually to make stuff pop, you're gonna need those highlights. And that's something I really didn't do much in my old art, and it shows. Now, of course, that's not only for skin. Look how much the top pops now that it has a little more volume. You'll see the same with the hair pretty soon, too. And with the hair, I begin how I always do, clueless, before falling back on my favorite hairbrush out of the 5 trillion that I have. Now begins the tail debacle. I realized that the tails were way too short, and I couldn't continue until I at least got a sketch of some new tails down. I mean, if you look at our original reference, they're super long. I don't know why I ever made them stubby and lame. But once I get that down, it's back to the hair. Partway through, I seem to remember how to do good hard shadows, but since that doesn't match the front hair, it gets blended away anyway. We finish up the hair with some highlights and erasing the, and some highlights and, okay, yeah, I struggled. Now for what I've been procrastinating! Yay! Yay! The antenna and the tails. We use ye ol' faithful fur brush and just go for it. And it looks good. And then I keep touching it. And touching it. And touching it, and now it looks horrible. Eventually, I just give up and move on to the other, easily replicating the shit show I just went through on the first one. Now here I forgot to record the lining and the coloring of the new tail bases, but you can probably imagine what it looked like, right? Like, redoing the same line 500 times, whatever. So I start to do a concept sketch for a sort of half-folded feather instead of leaving it flat like the rest, just to add some more dimensions to the piece. Using basic shapes and going from there, I just scribble until I'm happy with it, and start buckling in to do the real color layer. It is at this point an entire month passes. I just ran out of steam. I did a few different sketches during my break, but nothing was ever finished. So mostly I spent my time on the kitten that was dumped behind our house, making cookies, my fish tanks, mostly the cats though. It's been a lot of cleaning up poop. It was so worth it though. Look at her little face. I'm sorry. I had to mention her. Her name is Juno. By the time I get to the wings, I'm about to give up. I just want the piece to be done, and I just decide to do the bare minimum to get the point across and leave it at that. I was even going to just scrap the back view drawing, but ultimately you'll see later I decided against scrapping it. Now, fair warning, you're gonna see me fiddle with the background a lot. I couldn't decide on what color to use or what kind of effect to use around her, and initially I wanted to try this pop-up looking thing, but I couldn't make it look right. Eventually, I just give up for the time being and move down to putting down her personal details. Nixie, she, her, 24, Bloom Fairy, doesn't know what a sexuality is. Okay, she like vaguely knows that's a thing that people care about, so she somewhat knows what the basic ones like bisexuality are, even if she doesn't really remember the words all too well. She once exclaimed her support of the gender someone likes after being told the person might be bilingual. She's the epitome of she's a little confused, but she's got the spirit. She just doesn't know why people care about gender. Don't tell her about politics, she's too nice. Now, at some point during my rambling, I actually started on doing the back view. It turned out okay, especially since I've never drawn back muscles before, so I'm not too sour about it. I did something that looked like a little picture frame and then proceeded to mess with the background some more until I eventually settled on a nice blue with Clip Studio Paint's Speedline tool and a white outline. With that, I slammed stop on my recording like I'm turning off an alarm clock at 5 a.m. in a movie. And there she is. I added a couple details off camera, like her color palette and whatnot, but from what I can tell, the whole process took a time of around 21 hours, not including the stuff I forgot to record, did off camera on purpose, and of course all the breaks I took. I'm just relieved to finally be done, and honestly I don't know what character I'll do next. It's between my boys Oliver and Oscar, or the smaller green badass Miyoko. It'll be a while till next upload, I think. Thanks for sticking around until the end. I'll see you in like a year or something.